Hey everybody, so today we are going to talk about perpendicular bisectors, and we are going to go over practice in class tomorrow as well. So our objectives today to graph and write the equation of the perpendicular bisector of a line segment. So there's a lot of terms there that we need to make sure we understand. First of all, let's review a couple things. Let's write down some of the formulas that you need to remember. We have point slope equation, which remember uses a point, which would be x1, y1, and slope, which is always m. And the equation is y minus the y value in your point equals slope times x minus the x value in your point. All right, if it doesn't give you the slope, you might have to find it. So that's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or you could use the graph and figure out rise over run, how far up or down you're going and how far over. All right, your midpoint formula, remember you are looking for the middle of your x and y's. Find the average of your x's, average of your y's. And when you're finding average, you add. So you can add your x's and divide by 2, add your y's and divide by 2. You could also line it up like this, vertically or stacked, add them, and then divide by 2. Same thing. All right, parallel lines, remember, have the same slope. And perpendicular lines, which we're going to be working with today, perpendicular bisector, slopes are negative reciprocals. And remember what that means is, let's say your slope is -7. You're going to change the sign, so negative would be positive, and flip the fraction. -7 would be over 1, so it would end up being positive 1 over 7. All right, and that's something we're definitely going to be using today. Also, don't forget about your standard slope-intercept equation, y equals mx plus b. All right, so let's get started. We're going to just do a couple examples together, and again, we're going to get more practice tomorrow. It says write the equation of a line that's the perpendicular bisector of the line that connects these points. So perpendicular bisector, if it's, let's say we have this line segment. If it's perpendicular to it, it's going to run straight up and down. And if it's the bisector, it's going to go right through the center, which is your midpoint. So those are the things you're going to need for this. You're going to need to find your midpoint and your slope to find out what's perpendicular to it. And there's 2 ways you can do it. We're going to do it algebraically and graphically. So let's look algebraically. So we need the slope, right? Because if 2 things are perpendicular, you got to find the negative reciprocal. So remember x1, y1, or xy, xy. It doesn't matter what point you start with as long as you're consistent. So I'm just going to go from left to right. -2 minus 6. And since I started with -2, I got to do -4 minus 2. If you went the other way with it, you're going to get the exact same slope. So if you started with the second point, that's fine. So we have -8 over -6. You want to simplify that as much as possible. And don't forget, you can always use your calculator. -8 divided by -6. Math, enter, 4/3. Okay, so if it's perpendicular to that, though, remember we have to change the sign and flip it. So it'd be -3/4. All right, so there's part of it. That's our slope. The other thing that we need is a point. Well, You're not using one of these points because it's not running through them. It's running through the middle. Look at this diagram right here. So you need the midpoint. So now let's find the midpoint. You can line it up vertically. So add your x's, that gives us -2. Add your y's, that gives us 4. And then don't forget to cut them in half. -1, 2. There's your x1, y1 for your formula. So put them all together. Y minus the y value in your point equals your slope, -3/4. Ooh. Times x minus the x value. If it's x minus -1, remember that becomes x plus 1. And there's your equation. So again, that's the algebraic method. If it's perpendicular bisector, perpendicular tells me I need the slope, and then I need to flip and negate it. And since it's bisecting it, we need to find the midpoint, and those two things we'll use to put into our formula. Now, just like most other things in geometry, you can use your graph as well. So let's look at that. So we have our y-axis and our x-axis. Let's plot these points. -4, -2, go back 4, down 2. Always label. 2, 6, over 2, up 6. All right, I'm going to go over here under shapes. You can draw a line there. Okay, so again, you could do this instead of algebraic. It's not bad to know both ways, so you can check yourself. All right, so if you wanted to find the midpoint, you could find it here like we did, or you could say, all right, you could count how far up and over you go. You're going up 2, 4, 6, 8, over 2, 4, 6. So we went up 8, over 6. So if we cut that in half because it's midpoint, we'll go up 4, over 3. There's our midpoint, which just happens to be the same coordinates as what we got here, -1, 2. All right, now your slope. Again, let's pretend we didn't do it algebraically. We haven't done much so far. Now your slope, you're going up 4 over 3, up 4 over 3. So your slope is 4 over 3, which we found over here using this formula. So again, if it's perpendicular, we're going to go down 3 over 4 from that point. Down 3 over 4. Down 3 over 4. You can go up 3 backwards 4. Again, I'm going to draw my line. Do those look perpendicular? They sure do. All right, so now you'd have to write the equation. Now, if you wanted to, you could say, okay, my y-intercept's right here at 1. And again, we know the slope is -3/4. We just said that. That's how we found our points. So from that, you could say the equation is y equals, we said our slope was down 3 over 4, -3/4 x. And then it crossed at +1. So here's your equation in slope-intercept form. Here it is in point-slope form. If you wanted to put it in point-slope form and then solve, you can. All right, so if you wanted to, you'd first distribute. So you'd have y minus 2 equals -3/4 times x, -3/4 times, oh, hold on. Oh, I'm using the wrong point here. Scratch that. I'll show you that one in the next. It's just going to be too confusing. But again, same equations. Or actually, no, it's not crossing at 1. That's why it's off. They're not the same equation. In this case, you would have to just grab any old point. So you could just use the midpoint and plug it into that equation. That's my bad. I forgot it doesn't cross at the exact same line. Okay, let's do a couple more. Actually, where are we at for time? 10 minutes. Okay, we'll do one more, and then we'll do the last two in class tomorrow. So -6, -8. Again, perpendicular bisector. This is what we're trying to draw. All right, it's going to have to go through the middle, so we need our midpoint, and then we need the slope to figure out the perpendicular line slope. Okay, so midpoint, let's do that first. -6, -8. 4, -8. Again, if you'd rather graph it, you can. -6, 2, 4, 6, 8. And 4, -8. Well, this is interesting, huh? So you got a horizontal line. All right, so a line perpendicular to that would be vertical. Just find the middle. You're going over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Half of that would be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's your midpoint. We could draw that line. Now be careful. The equation of that line, it's only crossing the x-axis. It's not crossing the y, so it's just x equals, and where's it crossing? -1. That's the equation. All right, so we would have noticed this when we went to do the midpoint and the slope. So let's just look at it this way. Our midpoint should be the same, -1, -8, but let's check. So we have -2, -16, cut it in half. It's the point -1, -8, which is exactly what we had right here. And then your slope is -8 minus -8. And then our x is -6 minus 4. 0 divided by -10 is 0. If you put it in the calculator, you get 0. So that means it would have a slope of no slope, which is always x equals. So it's actually easier to do that one on the graph. Next one, similar to it. So -8, -2. So if I go back, -8, 2, 4, 6, -8, -2. And -8, 5. All right, so again, that has no slope. So my line that is perpendicular to it would be halfway between. Find that midpoint. -16 and 3. Cut it in half. So it's point -8, 1.5, which would be right there. So if I draw the perpendicular bisector, it's hitting only the y-axis, so it's just y equals 1.5. Those were kind of different, but we'll practice more with this one in class tomorrow. If you want to give it a shot now, you can, but we'll cover it in class tomorrow, like I said. Maybe even look at another one too to get the practice. All right, that's it for today. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.